The security monitor flickered in the corner of my cramped data recovery shop, casting blue shadows across towers of hard drives and broken laptops. It was past midnight on a Tuesday, and I was elbow-deep in someone's corrupted wedding photos, trying to salvage 20 years of memories from a drive that sounded like a dying cat when it spun up. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. That's when I heard Sarah's voice drifting through the baby monitor I'd rigged between the shop and our kitchen. Yeah, I know how that sounds. A 43-year-old man with a baby monitor. But when you're running a one-man tech repair business out of your garage and your wife thinks you're unavailable all the time, you learn to multitask. God, he's so pathetic, Sarah was saying, her voice honey-sweet in that way that meant she was talking to someone she wanted to impress. Still playing with his little computers like he's going to strike it rich. Meanwhile, I'm actually building something real. I stopped working. The screwdriver in my hand felt suddenly heavy. You should see him, Ryan. Grease under his fingernails, wearing the same 3 shirts in rotation. I swear, sometimes I wonder what I was thinking when I married him. Ryan. That was a new name. I'd been married to Sarah for 18 years. We'd met when she was a small-town girl working at the local newspaper, and I was the guy who fixed their ancient computer system for free because I had a crush on her. Back then, she thought my technical skills were so impressive, and my blue-collar work ethic was refreshingly honest. Now she was a rising star at Morrison & Associates, the city's premier PR firm, pulling in 6 figures while I scraped together maybe $40,000 a year fixing computers for seniors and small businesses. The math had shifted, and apparently so had her perspective on my worth. He actually asked me if I wanted to go to that dive bar downtown for our anniversary, she continued, and I could hear the eye roll in her voice. Flanagan's, can you imagine? With those awful peanut shells on the floor and that jukebox that only plays country music from the 90s. That dive bar was where we'd had our first date, where I'd nervously bought her drinks with crumpled $20 bills while she laughed at my stories about customers who brought in computers infected with so much malware they could barely boot up. She'd called it charming then. What did you tell him? Ryan's voice came through clearer now. Video call, probably. I could hear the smugness even through the static. I told him I had to work late. Again. Sarah laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. He actually looked disappointed. Like, what did he expect? That I'd want to celebrate 18 years of settling? My jaw clenched. I set down the screwdriver and moved closer to the monitor speaker. You're not settling anymore, Ryan said, his voice dropping into what I'm sure he thought was a seductive register. You're finally becoming who you were meant to be. I like the sound of that. Speaking of which, are we still on for Thursday? I told Danny I have that client dinner with the Peterson group. Danny. That was me. She was talking about lying to me while I sat 20 feet away, listening to every word. Absolutely. I made reservations at Meridian, 8 o'clock. Meridian. The new upscale place downtown where a single entree cost more than I usually spent on groceries for a week. I'd suggested we try it for her birthday last month, and she'd shot it down, saying we needed to be more practical with our finances. Apparently, practicality only applied when I was paying. The conversation continued for another few minutes. Logistics about their Thursday night, complaints about her boring home life, and increasingly intimate comments that made my stomach churn. When she finally hung up, I sat in the darkness of my shop, surrounded by the electronic ghosts of other people's broken lives, and tried to process what I'd just heard. Sarah wasn't just cheating on me. She was rewriting our entire history, turning 18 years of marriage into a prison sentence she'd finally figured out how to escape. And this Ryan character wasn't just some fling. He was her accomplice in dismantling everything we'd built together. I looked around my shop. Yeah, it wasn't glamorous. The fluorescent lights hummed, the space heater in the corner rattled, and the smell of old electronics and industrial cleaner wasn't exactly romantic. But it was mine. I'd built it from nothing, one satisfied customer at a time. I'd saved people's family photos, recovered lost business documents, and kept half the town's small businesses running with my pathetic skills. But Sarah was right about one thing. I wasn't getting rich doing it. In her world of expense accounts and networking events, I was becoming an embarrassment, a relic from her past that no longer fit her upgraded lifestyle. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No problem. Love you." She responded with a heart emoji. Just one. The kind of minimal effort that said she was already mentally checked out, but still needed to maintain the facade. I turned back to the corrupted hard drive on my workbench. 20 years of someone's memories, trapped in a device that was slowly dying. The irony wasn't lost on me. But here's the thing about data recovery. Sometimes the files that seem completely lost are actually just hidden, waiting for someone with the right skills and enough patience to bring them back to light. And sometimes, in the process of recovering what's been lost, you discover things that were never meant to be found. I powered up my laptop and opened a program I'd written years ago, a little utility for cloning phone data during legitimate recovery operations. It was designed to help customers who'd broken their phones but needed to transfer everything to a new device. Completely legal, completely ethical, and completely undetectable when used properly. Sarah's phone was an iPhone 12, 2 generations old, because she'd given her upgrade to our daughter Emma when she left for college. Every night, she plugged it into the charger on the kitchen counter, right next to the wireless router I'd set up and maintained for years. The same router that was currently broadcasting a hidden network called Tech Recovery Backup that only I knew existed. It would take about 30 minutes to clone her phone remotely, 30 minutes to download every text, every email, every photo, and every app's worth of data. 30 minutes to see exactly how deep this betrayal went. I told myself I was just confirming what I already knew, that I needed evidence before I confronted her, that any reasonable person in my situation would want to understand the full scope of what they were dealing with. But the truth was simpler and uglier than that. I wanted to know how much she hated me. I wanted to see every cruel word, every intimate moment with Ryan, every lie she'd told to cover her tracks. I wanted to hurt the way she was hurting me, but with the clinical precision that comes from having all the facts. The progress bar on my screen crept forward, 15% complete. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Emma, texting from her dorm room 3 hours away. "Hey Dad, can you Venmo me $50? Textbooks are crazy expensive this semester." I sent the money immediately, like I always did. Emma was the one pure thing in my life, the one person who still looked at me like I wasn't a failure. She was studying computer science at State, following in her old man's footsteps, despite Sarah's not-so-subtle suggestions that she consider more prestigious career paths. 25% complete. I thought about Emma coming home for Christmas break in a few weeks. Would Sarah and I still be married by then? Would we be playing happy family while she counted down the days until she could get back to Ryan? Would Emma be able to tell that something was wrong? Or had we already gotten so good at pretending that our own daughter couldn't see through the lies? 50% complete. The space heater rattled harder, fighting against the December cold seeping through the garage door. I'd been meaning to replace it for months, but business had been slow lately. People were keeping their electronics longer, and the big box stores were offering repair services that cut into my customer base. Sarah wasn't wrong about the financial pressure. I just disagreed with her solution. 75% complete. I heard footsteps above me. Sarah was moving around the kitchen, probably getting ready for bed. In a few hours, she'd wake up, kiss me goodbye like she had for 18 years, and head off to work where she'd spend the day planning her next evening with Ryan. The routine would continue, seamless and practiced, until she decided she was ready to blow up our lives officially. 100% complete. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the mouse. Once I opened these files, there would be no going back. I'd see things I couldn't unsee, know things I couldn't unknow. The marriage might be over already, but my ignorance was the last small mercy I had left. I clicked. The first folder that opened was her text messages with Ryan. 3 months of conversations, starting with professional exchanges about client strategies and evolving into something that made my chest tight with rage and humiliation. Ryan, your presentation today was incredible. You're wasted in this town. Sarah, tell me something I don't know. But not all of us can just pack up and move to Chicago whenever we want. Ryan, what's stopping you? Sarah, 18 years of bad decisions. That was from 6 weeks ago. I scrolled deeper, watching their relationship develop in real time. Professional admiration became personal confidences. Personal confidences became flirtation. Flirtation became explicit planning for a future that didn't include me. But it was the photos that really broke something inside me. Sarah had always been beautiful, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room, even now in her early 40s. But the woman in these photos was someone I barely recognized, confident, radiant, alive in a way she hadn't been around me in years. These weren't just affair photos, they were transformation photos, pictures of a woman becoming who she thought she was supposed to be, and in every single one, she looked happier than I'd seen her in our entire marriage. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness for a long time, listening to the buildings settle around me and the distant hum of traffic on the interstate. Tomorrow, Sarah would wake up and continue her double life. She'd kiss me goodbye, go to work, and probably text Ryan about how oblivious her husband was. But she was wrong about that last part. I wasn't oblivious anymore. I was awake, and I was angry, and I had skills she'd spent years dismissing as pathetic and unrealistic. Time to show her exactly how unrealistic they could be. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my shop until dawn, methodically going through Sarah's digital life like an archaeologist excavating the ruins of our marriage. By the time I heard her alarm go off upstairs, I had a comprehensive picture of her betrayal, and a growing understanding of just how little I meant to her anymore. The worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was the casual cruelty in how she talked about me to Ryan, like I was some annoying roommate she couldn't wait to evict, rather than the man who'd supported her career dreams for 18 years. Danny actually suggested we refinance the house to pay for Emma's college, she'd texted Ryan 2 weeks ago. Like I want to be tied to that mortgage for another 30 years. I told him we'd discuss it, but honestly, I'm hoping Emma gets more financial aid so I don't have to pretend to consider it. Emma's college fund had been my idea. I'd been putting away money for years, even when business was slow, because I wanted our daughter to graduate debt-free. Sarah had always claimed she was too stressed about finances to think about college planning, so I'd handled it alone. Apparently, her stress was less about money and more about being trapped in a life she'd outgrown. At 7:30, I heard the shower turn on upstairs. Sarah's morning routine was clockwork: shower, coffee, 20 minutes on hair and makeup, then out the door by 8:15. She'd perfected the timing over the years, maximizing her sleep while maintaining the polished appearance her job demanded. I waited until I heard her car pull out of the driveway, then went upstairs to make my own coffee. The kitchen still smelled like her perfume, something expensive she'd started wearing a few months ago. A gift from the office, she'd said when I'd commented on it. Now I wondered if Ryan had picked it out. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy Brennan, my old boxing coach and one of the few people in town who still treated me like I mattered. "Haven't seen you at the gym in weeks. You getting soft on me, Sullivan?" Tommy ran a small boxing gym above Flanagan's bar, the same dive Sarah had mocked to Ryan. It wasn't much to look at: cracked mirrors, heavy bags that had seen better decades, and a ring that squeaked when you moved around it. But it was real in a way that Sarah's world of corporate networking and strategic messaging wasn't. I texted back, "Been busy, might stop by tonight." "Good. You need to hit something that hits back. Computers don't count." Tommy had a point. For the past few years, I'd been so focused on building my business and keeping Sarah happy that I'd let other parts of my life atrophy. Friends, hobbies, anything that didn't directly contribute to our household income or Sarah's social calendar had gotten pushed aside. But Sarah wasn't the only one who could reinvent herself. I spent the morning working on actual customer repairs, letting the familiar routine of diagnostics and component replacement calm my racing thoughts. Around noon, I got a call from Janet Morrison, Sarah's boss at the PR firm. "Danny, I hope you don't mind me calling directly," Janet said, her voice carrying that practiced warmth that made her so effective at managing clients and employees. "I'm planning a little surprise party for Sarah next week. She's been working so hard lately, and I wanted to show our appreciation." "That's very thoughtful," I managed, wondering if Janet knew about Ryan. "What kind of party?" "Nothing too elaborate. Just the team, maybe some clients at that new place downtown, Meridian. I was hoping you could help me coordinate with her schedule, make sure she doesn't have any conflicts on Friday evening." Friday evening, the same night Sarah had told me she was working late on the Peterson Group account. "I'll check with her," I said. "But I think Friday should work fine." "Wonderful. And Danny? Don't mention it to her, obviously. We want it to be a complete surprise." After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone, pieces of a plan beginning to form in my mind. Sarah thought she was so clever, juggling her double life with surgical precision. But she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd underestimated the value of being married to someone who understood systems, networks, and the digital traces that modern life inevitably leaves behind. I opened my laptop and started a new project folder. Sarah, documentation. If this marriage was going to end, I wanted to control how it happened. No more being the oblivious husband who got blindsided by divorce papers. No more letting her rewrite history to make me the villain. The first step was understanding Ryan better. Sarah's text had given me his last name, Cooper, and enough personal details to start building a profile. LinkedIn showed me his professional history, a series of marketing and consulting jobs, each lasting about 2 years before he moved on to something better. His Instagram was a carefully curated collection of gym selfies, expensive dinners, and motivational quotes about living your best life, but it was his business registration records that got interesting. Ryan Cooper Consulting LLC had been formed 6 months ago, right around the time he'd started at Morrison & Associates. The business address was a P.O. box, and the only client listed on his website was something called Synergy Solutions Group, which, according to the Secretary of State database, was owned by Ryan Cooper. In other words, Ryan was billing Sarah's company for consulting work that he was essentially doing for himself. It wasn't technically illegal, but it was the kind of ethical gray area that could cause serious problems if the right person brought it to the wrong attention. I made a note to dig deeper into that later. Around 3 o'clock, my shop door chimed, and Emma walked in, her arms full of laundry and her face bright with the kind of smile that reminded me why I'd fought so hard to build something stable for our family. "Dad, surprise!" She dropped her laundry basket and hugged me, smelling like dorm room air freshener and the vanilla perfume she'd worn since high school. "I finished my last exam this morning, so I drove straight home. Mom doesn't know I'm here yet. I wanted to surprise her, too." My heart clenched. Emma had no idea she was walking into the middle of a war zone. "That's great, sweetheart. How were finals?" "Brutal, but I think I did okay. Professor Martinez said my database design project was one of the best he'd seen from an undergrad." She beamed with pride. "I used some of those techniques you taught me for data recovery." I'm proud of you. And I was. Emma had inherited my analytical mind, but paired it with an ambition that reminded me of Sarah in her younger, hungrier days. Your mom's going to be thrilled to see you. Is she at work? I was thinking we could all go to dinner tonight. Maybe that Italian place she likes. The Italian place Sarah liked was Meridian, the same restaurant where she'd been meeting Ryan, the same place where Janet was planning her surprise party, the same place that had become a symbol of everything I couldn't provide for my wife. She's been working pretty late lately, I said carefully. Big client project, but I'm sure she'll make time for dinner with you. Emma's face fell slightly. She's been working a lot lately, hasn't she? Every time I call, she sounds stressed. Your mom's very dedicated to her career. It's one of the things I've always admired about her. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had admired Sarah's drive back when it was focused on building something together instead of escaping from me. Emma spent the next hour telling me about college, her classes, her friends, her plans for next semester. It was the kind of normal, happy conversation that reminded me what I was fighting to preserve. Not the marriage, necessarily, but the family. Emma deserved better than having her parents' divorce turn into a public spectacle of accusations and counter-accusations. She deserved the truth, but she also deserved to hear it in a way that didn't destroy her relationship with either of her parents. Around 5 o'clock, Emma went upstairs to shower and change for dinner. I heard Sarah's car in the driveway a few minutes later, followed by Emma's excited shout of "Mom!" and Sarah's surprised laughter. For a moment, listening to them talk and laugh together, I could almost pretend that everything was normal, that Sarah was just going through a rough patch at work, that our marriage was solid enough to weather whatever midlife crisis she was having, that 18 years of history meant something more than a mistake she was eager to correct. Then I heard Sarah on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. I can't tonight, obviously. Emma's home. No, I don't know how long. Yes, I'm disappointed too, but what am I supposed to do? We'll figure something out tomorrow. Ryan, obviously. Even Emma's surprise homecoming was just another inconvenience to work around. I walked upstairs and found them in the kitchen. Sarah was finishing her phone call while Emma rummaged through the refrigerator, critiquing our grocery choices with the confidence of someone who'd been eating dining hall food for 4 months. Dad, you guys have literally nothing to eat. How are you surviving? Your father's been living on frozen dinners and takeout pizza, Sarah said, slipping her phone into her purse. I keep telling him to eat better, but you know how he is. Another small lie, casual and automatic. Sarah had stopped cooking months ago, claiming she was too tired after work. I'd been handling most of the grocery shopping and meal preparation, but apparently that didn't fit the narrative she was building about my inadequacies as a husband. Well, lucky for both of you, I'm home now, Emma said, and I'm craving real food. Can we go to that new place downtown, Meridian? Sarah's face went carefully blank. Meridian? That's pretty expensive, honey. It's my treat, Emma said. I got a partial refund on my textbooks and I want to celebrate finishing my first semester. Plus, I want to hear all about your new job, Mom. You sounded so excited about it when we talked last month. I watched Sarah calculate her options. She couldn't refuse without seeming ungrateful for Emma's generosity. She couldn't suggest an alternative without explaining why Meridian was problematic. And she couldn't fake enthusiasm without risking that we'd run into Ryan or someone else who knew about her double life. That sounds lovely, Sarah said finally. Let me just freshen up a bit. She disappeared upstairs, and I heard her on the phone again, her voice muffled but urgent. Probably warning Ryan to stay away from Meridian tonight, or maybe canceling plans I didn't even know about. Emma looked at me with concern. Is Mom okay? She seems really stressed. She's fine, I said. Just tired. The new job's been demanding. Another lie, but a kinder one. Emma would learn the truth soon enough, but tonight wasn't the time. Tonight was about family dinner and pretending that we were still the people we used to be. But as I went upstairs to change clothes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner was going to be more than just a family reunion. It was going to be a test of Sarah's ability to maintain her facade, of my ability to play the oblivious husband, and of whether our family could survive the collision between the life we'd built and the life Sarah wanted. I put on my best shirt and practiced smiling in the bathroom mirror. Time for the performance of my life. Meridian was everything I'd expected and nothing I could afford on a regular basis. Exposed brick walls, Edison bulb lighting, and servers who introduced themselves like they were auditioning for a play about artisanal food culture. The kind of place where the menu didn't list prices and the wine list required a second mortgage. Emma was in her element, confidently ordering appetizers and asking our server about the chef's recommendations. Sarah sat across from me, her smile perfectly calibrated for public consumption, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She kept glancing around the restaurant, like she expected Ryan to materialize at any moment. "This place is incredible," Emma was saying, photographing her butternut squash soup for Instagram. "How did you guys find it?" "Your mother heard about it from someone at work," I said, watching Sarah's reaction. "Right, honey?" "Yes," Sarah said carefully. "A colleague mentioned it." "You should bring Dad here for your anniversary," Emma suggested. "It would be so romantic." Sarah's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Your father and I are more comfortable with simpler places." "Mom, that's not fair. Dad would totally appreciate good food. You guys never do anything fun anymore." I could have kissed Emma for her unintentional accuracy. Instead, I reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Your mother works hard. She deserves nice things." Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or surprise that I wasn't playing the role of the inadequate husband she'd been describing to Ryan. "Speaking of work," Emma continued, "tell me about this new position. You sounded so excited when you got promoted." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah talked about her job with genuine enthusiasm. This was the woman I'd fallen in love with, passionate, articulate, ambitious. She described client campaigns and strategic initiatives with the kind of energy she used to bring to our conversations about the future. But every time she mentioned a colleague or a project, I found myself wondering which details she was sharing with Ryan, which victories she was celebrating with him instead of me, which challenges she was using as excuses to stay late at the office. "And there's this new consultant we're working with," Sarah was saying. "Ryan Cooper. He's got some really innovative ideas about brand positioning." Emma perked up. "Is he cute?" "Emma!" Sarah's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "What? I'm just asking. You're allowed to notice if your coworkers are attractive, Mom. You're married, not gone." I nearly choked on my wine. Emma had no idea how loaded that comment was, but Sarah looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. "He's professional," Sarah managed. "That's code for cute but married," Emma said knowingly. "I can tell by how you're blushing." "I'm not blushing." "You totally are. Dad, look, Mom's blushing." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw the woman who'd been sharing intimate dinners with another man in this exact restaurant. The woman who'd been planning a future that didn't include me. The woman who was sitting here tonight, playing happy family, while counting down the minutes until she could text Ryan about how awkward this was. "Your mother's always been beautiful when she blushes," I said quietly. Something shifted in Sarah's expression. For a moment, she looked genuinely confused, like she'd forgotten that I was capable of complimenting her, like she'd been so focused on my failures as a husband that she'd lost track of why she'd married me in the first place. "Dad, that's so sweet," Emma said. "You guys are still totally in love, aren't you?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Sarah and I stared at each other across the table, 18 years of history compressed into a single moment of reckoning. "Of course we are," Sarah said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," I agreed, raising my wine glass. "To 18 years of marriage and many more to come." We toasted, and I watched Sarah drink her wine like it was medicine. Emma beamed at us, completely oblivious to the undercurrents of tension and betrayal swirling around our table. But the evening wasn't over yet. As we were finishing dessert, I excused myself to use the restroom. Instead, I walked to the bar where I'd spotted a familiar face earlier in the evening. Marcus Webb, a freelance photographer who'd done some work for Sarah's company and occasionally brought his equipment to me for repairs. "Danny Sullivan," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Good to see you. How's business?" "Can't complain. Listen, I need a favor." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What kind of favor?" I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of Ryan that I'd pulled from his LinkedIn profile. "You know this guy?" Marcus studied the image. "Yeah, that's Ryan Cooper. He's been doing some consulting work with Morrison and Associates. Why?" "I think he's running some kind of side business that might be problematic for Sarah's company. Nothing illegal, just ethically questionable. I'm worried it could reflect badly on her." It wasn't entirely a lie. Ryan's self-dealing consulting arrangement was questionable, and it could cause problems for Sarah if it came to light. I just wasn't mentioning that I planned to be the one bringing it to light. "What do you need from me?" "Next time you see him around the office, maybe take a few candid shots. Nothing invasive, just documentation. I'll pay your usual rate." Marcus considered this. "You're not planning anything crazy, are you? I don't want to get involved in some kind of corporate espionage thing." "Nothing crazy," I assured him. "Just looking out for my wife's career." Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay, but I want cash up front, and if this gets weird, I'm out." "Fair enough." We shook hands, and I returned to the table, where Emma was showing Sarah something on her phone and laughing. For a moment, they looked so much alike. The same bright eyes, the same animated gestures, the same infectious enthusiasm for life. Emma had gotten the best parts of both of us. Sarah's ambition and social intelligence, my analytical mind and stubborn loyalty. Whatever happened between Sarah and me, Emma would be fine. She was stronger than either of us had been at her age. But that didn't mean I was going to make this easy for Sarah. The drive home was quiet. Emma dozed in the back seat, exhausted from finals and the long drive home. Sarah stared out the passenger window, lost in her own thoughts. "That was nice," I said, as we pulled into our driveway. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "It was. Emma seems happy at school." "She does. We should do family dinners more often, when your work schedule allows, of course." Sarah turned to look at me, and I could see her trying to read my expression in the dashboard light. "Danny, is everything okay?" For a split second, I considered telling her the truth. That I knew about Ryan, about the lies, about the plans she was making for a future without me. That I'd spent the morning documenting her betrayal and the evening planning my response. Instead, I smiled and squeezed her hand. "Everything's fine. I'm just happy to have both my girls home." She squeezed back, and I felt her wedding ring press against my palm. The same ring I'd saved for months to buy, back when we were young and broke and convinced that love was enough to overcome any obstacle. Now it felt like evidence in a case I was still building. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed and Sarah had disappeared into her home office to catch up on emails, I sat in my shop and opened the project folder I'd started that morning. Ryan Cooper's consulting business was definitely problematic. A deeper dive into his financial records, publicly available through business filings, showed a pattern of short-term contracts and questionable billing practices. He was essentially a corporate nomad, moving from company to company, extracting what value he could, and moving on before anyone noticed the ethical issues. But Sarah wasn't just a victim of his scam. According to her text messages, she was actively helping him identify potential clients and navigate Morrison and Associates' internal politics. She was either complicit in his scheme or too blinded by infatuation to see what he was doing. Either way, it was going to be a problem for her when the truth came out. I started drafting an anonymous email to Janet Morrison, carefully outlining the potential conflict of interest issues with Ryan's consulting arrangement. Nothing accusatory, just a concerned employee, identity protected, raising questions about proper vendor oversight. But before I sent it, I wanted to see how far this rabbit hole went. I opened Sarah's phone data again and started cross-referencing her calendar with Ryan's social media posts. The pattern was clear. Every late work night corresponded to a photo of Ryan at some upscale restaurant or event. Every client dinner matched up with his posts about networking with amazing people. They weren't just having an affair. They were building a shared social media narrative about their relationship, documenting their romance in real time for anyone who cared to connect the dots. The arrogance of it was breathtaking. They thought they were so clever, so sophisticated, so far above the mundane concerns of middle-class marriage that they could conduct their affair in plain sight. But they'd forgotten something important. Every digital interaction leaves a trace, and I was very good at following traces. I worked until dawn, building a comprehensive timeline of Sarah and Ryan's relationship. Every text, every photo, every social media interaction, every financial transaction that connected them. By the time I heard Emma moving around upstairs, I had enough evidence to destroy both of their careers and reputations. The question was, how much damage did I want to cause? Sarah had hurt me, betrayed me, and planned to discard me like an outdated piece of equipment. But she was still Emma's mother, still the woman I'd loved for 18 years, still someone who deserved a chance to end this with some dignity intact. Ryan, on the other hand, was a predator who'd targeted my wife as part of a broader pattern of professional and personal exploitation. He didn't deserve mercy. I made a decision. Sarah would get one chance to end this affair and commit to rebuilding our marriage. One chance to choose her family over her fantasy of a more exciting life. But Ryan was going to pay for what he'd done, regardless of what Sarah decided. I opened my laptop and started typing an email that would change everything. The email to Janet Morrison was a masterpiece of corporate concern trolling. I'd spent years listening to Sarah navigate office politics, and I'd learned the language of professional anxiety. Nothing direct, nothing accusatory, just a series of carefully phrased questions about vendor oversight and potential conflicts of interest. I've noticed some unusual patterns in our consulting contracts that might warrant review, I wrote, using a burner email account I'd created through a VPN. Specifically, Ryan Cooper Consulting LLC appears to be billing for services that overlap significantly with Mr. Cooper's regular employment duties. While I'm sure this is just an oversight, it might be worth having our legal team review the arrangement to ensure we're in compliance with our vendor policies. I attached a detailed breakdown of Ryan's billing patterns, cross-referenced with his social media posts and Sarah's calendar entries. Nothing that directly implicated Sarah, but enough to raise serious questions about professional judgment and oversight. I scheduled the email to send Monday morning at 9 a.m., when Janet would be reviewing her weekend messages and preparing for the week ahead. Then I turned my attention to the more personal aspects of my revenge. Emma was in the kitchen when I went upstairs, making pancakes and humming along to music playing from her phone. She'd always been a morning person, unlike Sarah, who treated any conversation before 10 a.m. as a personal attack. "Morning, Dad? Want some pancakes? I'm making way too many." "Thanks, sweetheart. Where's your mom?" "Still sleeping. She came to bed really late last night. I heard her on the phone around midnight." Of course she had been. Probably explaining to Ryan why she couldn't meet him, reassuring him that Emma's visit was just a temporary inconvenience, planning their next rendezvous. "She's been working really hard lately," I said, accepting a plate of pancakes that smelled like childhood memories and better times. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Emma's voice had that careful tone that meant she was about to broach a sensitive topic. "Always. Are you and Mom okay? I mean, really okay?" I looked at my daughter, smart, perceptive, kind, and felt the weight of the choice I was about to make. I could lie, maintain the facade for a few more days or weeks, let her enjoy her winter break without the shadow of our marital problems. Or I could start preparing her for what was coming. Why do you ask? You guys just seem distant, like you're both trying really hard to act normal, but it's not quite working. She sat down across from me, her expression serious. And Mom's been different lately, more focused on work, less interested in family stuff. I noticed it over Thanksgiving, but I thought maybe she was just stressed about her new position. Emma had inherited my analytical mind and Sarah's emotional intelligence. Of course, she'd noticed the cracks in our marriage. Your mom and I are going through a rough patch, I said carefully. Nothing that can't be worked out, but yeah, things have been tense lately. Is it about money? Because I can get more financial aid for next semester, or maybe take out loans? No, sweetheart. This isn't about money, and it's definitely not about you or your education. This is between your mom and me, and we're going to figure it out. Emma nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. She was old enough to understand that marriages sometimes failed, smart enough to recognize the warning signs, and mature enough to blame herself for problems that had nothing to do with her. Whatever happens, I continued, both your mom and I love you more than anything in the world. That will never change, no matter what else might change. Dad, you're scaring me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I just want you to know that you're the most important thing in both our lives, and we're going to make sure you're okay no matter what. Sarah appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing her bathrobe and looking like she hadn't slept well. Her hair was messy, her makeup was gone, and for a moment, she looked like the young woman I'd married instead of the polished professional she'd become. Good morning, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Emma, those pancakes smell amazing. I made extra, Emma said, but her voice was subdued now. The conversation with me had shifted her mood, and Sarah noticed immediately. Is everything okay? Just tired, Emma said. College is exhausting. Sarah looked between Emma and me, clearly sensing undercurrents she couldn't identify. Well, I'm glad you're home. I was thinking we could do some Christmas shopping today, just the two of us. There's a new boutique downtown that I've been wanting to check out. That sounds fun, Emma said, but without her usual enthusiasm. I watched Sarah try to read the room, her PR instincts telling her that something had shifted overnight, but not quite able to pinpoint what. She was good at managing external perceptions, but she'd never been particularly skilled at navigating the emotional dynamics of our family. That had always been my job. After breakfast, Sarah and Emma left for their shopping expedition. I waited until their car was out of the driveway, then called Tommy Brennan. Sullivan, please tell me you're calling to schedule some gym time. You sounded like hell yesterday. Actually, I was wondering if you'd heard any gossip lately about Sarah. Tommy was quiet for a moment. He'd known both of us for years, had been at our wedding, had watched Emma grow up. He was also the kind of guy who heard everything that happened in our small city, whether he wanted to or not. What kind of gossip? The kind that involves her working late with a certain consultant from her office. Another pause. Danny, you sure you want to go down this road? I'm already down this road, Tommy. I just want to know how public it's gotten. Public enough that people are talking. Not malicious talk, mostly just concerned. People like you, Danny, they're worried about you. What are they saying? That Sarah's been seen around town with some pretty boy from her office, expensive restaurants, hotel bars, that kind of thing, and that she's been different lately, more focused on herself, less interested in being part of the community. It was worse than I'd thought. In a city this size, affairs were hard to hide, especially when you were conducting them in public. Sarah and Ryan had been so focused on their sophisticated romance that they'd forgotten they were living in a place where everyone knew everyone else's business. How long has this been going on? People started noticing maybe 6 weeks ago. But Danny, listen to me. Whatever you're thinking about doing, think twice. Revenge feels good in the moment, but it doesn't fix anything. This isn't about revenge, Tommy. This is about truth. Same thing sometimes. After I hung up, I sat in my shop and tried to process what I'd learned. Sarah's affair wasn't just destroying our marriage, it was damaging her reputation in the community where we'd built our lives. People were talking, judging, taking sides, and they were feeling sorry for me. That realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just the betrayed husband. I was the pathetic cuckold that everyone pitied. The guy whose wife was so obviously cheating that strangers felt compelled to worry about him. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Webb. Got some interesting photos from the Morrison office yesterday. When do you want to see them? Now, I texted back. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the neighborhoods where Sarah and I were known. Marcus handed me a manila envelope with the casual discretion of someone who'd done this kind of work before. Your instincts were right, he said. This guy Cooper is definitely running some kind of side operation. I saw him in 3 different meetings yesterday, and in every one, he was presenting materials that looked suspiciously similar to Morrison's standard client packages. I opened the envelope and found a series of photos that told a clear story. Ryan in Janet's office, presenting what looked like a proposal. Ryan in the conference room with Sarah and 2 clients, pointing to charts and graphs. Ryan in Sarah's office, leaning over her desk in a way that was just slightly too intimate for a professional relationship. But it was the last photo that really caught my attention. Ryan and Sarah in the parking garage, standing close together next to her car, his hand on her cheek in a gesture that was unmistakably romantic. When was this taken? Yesterday afternoon, around 5:30, right after the client meeting. Yesterday afternoon. While I was at home, preparing for our family dinner, Sarah had been in the parking garage with Ryan, probably planning their next rendezvous, and complaining about the inconvenience of Emma's surprise visit. This is exactly what I needed, I told Marcus, handing him an envelope full of cash. But I might need more documentation over the next few weeks. Are you available for additional work? Depends on what kind of work. Nothing illegal, just more of the same. Documenting patterns of behavior that might be relevant to corporate compliance issues. Marcus nodded. I can do that. But Danny, be careful with this stuff. Once you open this can of worms, there's no closing it again. The can's already open, I said. I'm just deciding how many worms to let out. That evening, Sarah and Emma returned from their shopping trip loaded down with bags and talking excitedly about the boutiques they'd visited and the Christmas presents they'd found. Sarah seemed more relaxed than she'd been in weeks, and Emma was back to her usual cheerful self. For a moment, watching them unpack their purchases and model their new clothes for me, I could almost pretend that we were still a normal family. That Sarah's affair was just a temporary madness that would pass, that our marriage could survive this betrayal, that Emma would never have to choose sides in a war between her parents. But then Sarah's phone buzzed with a text, and I watched her face change as she read it. The relaxation disappeared, replaced by the tense alertness that had become her default expression over the past few months. Everything okay? I asked. Just work, she said, slipping the phone into her purse. Some kind of issue with the Peterson Group account. Another lie, smooth and automatic. But this time Emma noticed too. I saw her glance between Sarah and me, her expression thoughtful. Mom, it's Sunday night. Can't work stuff wait until tomorrow? Unfortunately, client emergencies don't follow normal business hours, Sarah said. That's the price of success in this industry. Maybe Dad could help, Emma suggested innocently. He's really good with problem solving. Sarah's laugh was sharp. This isn't the kind of problem your father can fix, honey. It requires a certain level of professional expertise. The dismissal was casual and cutting, delivered with the kind of practiced condescension that suggested she'd been thinking it for a long time. Emma's face flushed with embarrassment and anger. Dad has professional expertise, Emma said. He runs his own business. He solves problems for people every day. Of course he does, Sarah said, her tone suggesting the opposite. I just meant that PR crises require a different skill set. Like what? Being good at lying? The words hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah stared at Emma with genuine shock, clearly not expecting pushback from our usually diplomatic daughter. Emma, that's not... It is though, isn't it? PR is basically professional lying. Making bad things sound good, making guilty people look innocent, making people believe whatever version of the truth serves your clients best. I watched Sarah struggle to respond. Emma wasn't wrong exactly, but she was also attacking the career that Sarah had worked years to build, the professional identity that had become central to her sense of self-worth. Public relations is about strategic communication, Sarah said finally. It's about helping people and organizations tell their stories effectively. Stories, Emma repeated. Not truth, stories. Sometimes stories are more important than truth, Sarah said, and I could hear the conviction in her voice. Sometimes the truth is too complicated, too messy, too hurtful for people to handle. Sometimes people need a cleaner narrative. It was the most honest thing she'd said in months, and it revealed everything about how she viewed our marriage. The truth, 18 years of partnership, shared struggles, mutual support, was too messy for the story she wanted to tell about her life. She needed a cleaner narrative, one where I was the obstacle she'd overcome rather than the partner who'd helped her succeed. That's really sad, Mom, Emma said quietly. I think people deserve the truth, even when it's messy. Sarah looked like she'd been slapped. Emma had just articulated the moral philosophy that Sarah had spent months abandoning, and hearing it from her daughter clearly stung. I think I'll go to bed early, Sarah said. It's been a long day. After she left, Emma and I sat in the living room, the tension from the conversation still thick in the air. Dad, what's really going on? Emma asked. And please don't tell me it's just work stress. I'm not stupid. I looked at my daughter, 19 years old, smart as hell, and deserving of more honesty than either of her parents had been giving her. Your mom is having an affair, I said quietly. Emma's face went through a series of emotions: shock, denial, anger, and finally a kind of sad resignation. With that consultant? Ryan? How did you? The way she talked about him at dinner last night, and the way she's been acting, and the fact that she's been working late constantly but never seems tired. Emma shook her head. I was hoping I was wrong. I'm sorry you had to figure it out on your own. What are you going to do? It was the question I'd been asking myself for days. What was I going to do? Confront Sarah directly? Expose Ryan's professional misconduct? Fight for my marriage, or accept its end with whatever dignity I could salvage? I don't know yet, I said. But whatever I do, I want you to know that this isn't your fault, and it's not about you. This is between your mom and me. Are you going to divorce her? Maybe, probably. I don't think there's a way back from this. Emma nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. I'm really sorry, Dad. You don't deserve this. Neither do you, sweetheart. Neither do you. We sat together in the quiet living room, surrounded by Christmas decorations and shopping bags, mourning the end of the family we used to be. Outside, snow was starting to fall, covering the world in a clean white blanket that made everything look peaceful and perfect. But inside our house, the truth was finally coming to light, messy and hurtful and impossible to ignore. The war was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with the kind of bitter cold that made the whole city feel brittle and sharp. I was in my shop by 7 a.m., ostensibly working on repairs but actually watching my phone, waiting for the email I'd sent to Janet Morrison to detonate. At 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. Sarah's number. Danny, I need you to come to the office immediately. Her voice was tight with panic. What's wrong? There's been some kind of misunderstanding about Ryan's consulting work. Janet wants to meet with both of us. Both of us. That was interesting. Janet must have connected some dots between Sarah's oversight responsibilities and Ryan's questionable billing practices. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Danny, I need you to know that whatever you might hear today, it's not what it looks like. What do you think it looks like, Sarah? Silence on the other end of the line. Then, just, please, trust me. Trust her. The woman who'd been lying to me for months was asking me to trust her. I'll see you soon, I said, and hung up. Morrison and Associates occupied 3 floors of a renovated brick building downtown, all exposed beams and polished concrete floors designed to suggest both historical gravitas and contemporary innovation. I'd been there exactly twice before, once for Sarah's hiring celebration, once for a company Christmas party where I'd spent the evening listening to her colleagues discuss marketing strategies I didn't understand. The receptionist directed me to Janet's office on the 3rd floor. Sarah was already there, sitting across from Janet's desk with her hands folded in her lap like a schoolgirl called to the principal's office. Ryan was nowhere to be seen. Danny, thank you for coming, Janet said, standing to shake my hand. Please, have a seat. Janet Morrison was in her 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of professional presence that made you understand why she'd built a successful PR firm from scratch. She was also, according to Sarah, someone who valued loyalty and integrity above almost everything else. I'm going to be direct, Janet continued. We've received some concerning information about potential conflicts of interest involving Ryan Cooper's consulting arrangement with our firm. Since Sarah has been his primary point of contact, I wanted to discuss this with both of you before we take any further action. Sarah's face was pale. Janet, I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me share what we know. Janet opened a folder on her desk. According to our anonymous source, Mr. Cooper has been billing us for consulting services that substantially overlap with his regular employment duties. Moreover, there's evidence that he's been using proprietary Morrison methodologies in his external consulting work, potentially creating liability issues for our firm. I kept my expression neutral, but internally I was impressed. Janet had done her homework quickly and thoroughly. The anonymous email had just been the starting point. She'd clearly spent the morning digging deeper into Ryan's activities. Where is Ryan now? Sarah asked. Mr. Cooper is no longer with the firm as of this morning, Janet said. His employment was terminated for cause, and we're currently reviewing our legal options regarding the consulting payments. Sarah's face went from pale to ashen. Janet, I had no idea. Sarah, I need to ask you directly. Were you aware of any irregularities in Mr. Cooper's billing practices? It was the moment of truth. Sarah could lie, claim complete ignorance, and probably save her job. Or she could tell the truth about her relationship with Ryan and accept the consequences. I watched my wife of 18 years calculate her options, and I could see the exact moment when she chose self-preservation over honesty. I had no idea, she said. Ryan handled all the consulting paperwork directly. I just coordinated his schedule and provided him with client background information. Janet nodded, making notes in the folder. And you never noticed any overlap between his consulting deliverables and his regular work product? No, I didn't review his consulting work in detail. I trusted his professional judgment. Another lie. I'd seen Sarah's text messages with Ryan, including several where they'd discussed specific strategies for repackaging Morrison's client work into his consulting proposals. I see, Janet said. Well, given your level of involvement, I don't think there are any disciplinary issues for you personally. However, I am concerned about the oversight protocols in your department. Going forward, I'll need you to implement stricter vendor management procedures. Of course, Sarah said quickly. Whatever you think is best. Janet turned to me. Danny, I apologize for involving you in this workplace drama. I know it must be awkward to be called in to discuss your wife's professional relationships. Professional relationships. The phrase hung in the air like a challenge. Actually, I said, I think there's something else you should know about Sarah and Ryan's relationship. Sarah's head snapped toward me, her eyes wide with panic. Danny, don't... They've been having an affair, I said calmly. For at least 3 months. I have documentation if you need it. The silence in the room was deafening. Janet stared at me, then at Sarah, then back at me. Danny, what the hell are you doing? Sarah whispered. I'm telling the truth, I said. Something that seems to be in short supply around here. Janet closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. Sarah, is this true? Sarah looked trapped, cornered, desperate. For a moment I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the parking garage photo, the cruel comments about my inadequacies, the months of lies and manipulation. It's complicated, Sarah said finally. No, Janet said, her voice hard as steel. It's really not complicated at all. You've been having an affair with a subordinate contractor, and you failed to disclose a clear conflict of interest that has now cost this firm thousands of dollars and potentially exposed us to legal liability. Janet, please. You're fired, Sarah. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and you'll receive information about Cobra coverage and your final paycheck within the week. Sarah stared at Janet in shock. You can't be serious. I'm absolutely serious. This firm's reputation is built on trust and integrity. You've compromised both. Janet pressed a button on her desk phone. Security to my office, please. Sarah turned to me, her face twisted with rage and desperation. Are you happy now? You've destroyed my career. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just stopped pretending that your lies were the truth. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Janet nodded to them, and they stepped forward. Mrs. Sullivan, we'll need you to gather your personal items and leave the building, one of them said. Sarah stood up slowly, her professional composure finally cracking completely. This isn't over, Danny. You think you've won something, but you have no idea what you've just done. I've told the truth, I said. That's all? As the security guards escorted Sarah out, Janet turned to me with an expression that was part admiration, part concern. That took courage, she said, but it's going to cost you your marriage. My marriage was already over, I said. I just didn't want to be the only one who didn't know it. I left Morrison and Associates and drove home through the snow, feeling simultaneously vindicated and hollow. Sarah's career was destroyed, Ryan was unemployed and potentially facing legal action, and their affair was now public knowledge in the professional community where they'd both built their reputations. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and sad and uncertain about what came next. Emma was waiting for me when I got home, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her face serious. Dad, we need to talk. What's wrong? Mom called me an hour ago, crying and screaming about how you'd sabotaged her career and destroyed her life. She said you'd turned into someone she didn't recognize, someone cruel and vindictive. I sat down across from Emma, suddenly feeling every one of my 43 years. What do you think? I asked. I think Mom made her choices, and now she's dealing with the consequences. But I also think you could have handled this differently. How? You could have confronted her privately first, given her a chance to end the affair and try to save the marriage before you blew up her entire professional life. Emma was right, of course. I could have been the bigger person, could have tried to salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. But I'd been so angry, so humiliated, so tired of being the fool who didn't know his wife was cheating that I'd chosen destruction over reconciliation. Would you have wanted me to do that? I asked. Try to save the marriage? Emma considered the question seriously. I would have wanted you to try, yeah. Not because I think Mom deserved another chance, but because I think you deserved to know that you'd done everything you could. And now? Now I think you're both going to have to live with the choices you made. Mom chose to have an affair, and you chose to destroy her career instead of trying to save your marriage. Neither of those choices was wrong exactly, but they both have consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over, Sullivan. You have no idea who you're messing with. Ryan, presumably making threats from whatever hole he'd crawled into after losing his job. I showed the text to Emma, who rolled her eyes. What a loser. Are you worried? Not particularly. What's he going to do, beat me up? Sue me for telling the truth? His career is finished, and everyone in town knows why. But even as I said it, I felt a chill of unease. Ryan struck me as the kind of man who didn't handle humiliation well, and I'd just humiliated him very publicly and very thoroughly. That evening, Sarah came home to pack her things. Emma and I stayed in the living room while she moved through the house like a ghost, gathering 18 years of accumulated possessions and sorting them into boxes. When she was finished, she stood in the doorway with her suitcases, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. I'm staying at Jennifer's for now, she said. Jennifer was her sister, who lived across town and had never particularly liked me. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings. Sarah, I said, for what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her cycling through emotions: anger, sadness, regret, defiance. No, you're not, she said finally. You're sorry that I cheated, and you're sorry that our marriage failed, but you're not sorry about what you did today. You wanted to hurt me, and you succeeded. She was right. I wasn't sorry about exposing her affair or destroying Ryan's career. I was sorry about the pain it caused Emma. Sorry about the years we'd wasted. Sorry about the love we'd lost. But I wasn't sorry about fighting back. Maybe not, I admitted. Sarah nodded, like she'd expected that answer. Goodbye, Danny. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. She kissed Emma goodbye, loaded her car, and drove away into the snowy night. Emma and I sat in the quiet house, surrounded by the empty spaces where Sarah's things used to be. So what happens now? Emma asked. Now we figure out how to be a family of 2 instead of 3, I said, and we try to build something better from what's left. Are you going to be okay, Dad? I looked around our living room, smaller now without Sarah's presence, but somehow more peaceful too. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells or pretending to be someone I wasn't. Yeah, I said, and meant it. I think I'm going to be fine. 3 weeks later, I was closing up the shop when Tommy Brennan called with news that made everything feel complete. You hear about your wife's boyfriend? He asked. Ex-wife's ex-boyfriend, I corrected. The divorce papers had been finalized that morning. What about him? Got arrested last night. Turns out he's been running the same consulting scam at companies all over the region. FBI got involved when they realized it crossed state lines. Your anonymous tip to Morrison apparently started a whole federal investigation. I sat down heavily in my desk chair. I'd known Ryan was unethical, but I hadn't realized the scope of his operation. Is Sarah involved? Doesn't look like it. Seems like she was just another mark, someone he used for access and information. FBI cleared her after a couple of interviews. So Sarah had been a victim too, in her way. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. She'd still chosen to betray our marriage, still chosen to lie and manipulate and plan a future without me. Ryan's criminality didn't excuse her choices. Danny, you still there? Yeah, I'm here. Thanks for letting me know. You okay with all this? I thought about the question seriously. Was I okay? My marriage was over, my wife had moved across the country to start fresh somewhere else, and Emma was spending her winter break helping me figure out how to be a single father to a college-age daughter. But I was sleeping through the night for the first time in months. I was rebuilding relationships with friends I'd neglected during the final years of my marriage. I was even dating someone, a woman named Lisa, who owned a bookstore downtown and thought my technical skills were impressive rather than embarrassing. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." "Good. You coming to the gym this week? I've got a new heavy bag that needs breaking in." "I'll be there." After I hung up, I sat in my shop for a while, listening to the familiar sounds of electronics humming and the building settling around me. This wasn't the life I'd planned at 25 or even at 40, but it was a good life, an honest life, a life where I didn't have to pretend to be less than I was to make someone else feel better about themselves. Emma was right. I could have handled things differently. I could have been more forgiving, more understanding, more willing to fight for a marriage that was already over. But I'd chosen truth over peace, justice over reconciliation, and self-respect over false hope. It had cost me everything I thought I wanted, and given me everything I actually needed.